All right, so here's a video just talking with a client recently that had some elbow tendonitis, and he basically has what's called golfer's elbow on both elbows. So that's where a lot of people feel like a ton of pain right here on the inside, kind of this medial section of the elbow. There's another condition called tennis elbow, which is actually more felt on the outside area of the elbow joint. So this particular video is more about the golfer's elbow, and this particular gentleman had a pretty bad golfer's elbow on both of his elbows, but one side was just a little bit worse than the other. So when we were talking about some of the points of that, basically what ends up happening with this condition is that because of some shoulder dysfunction, it puts more strain and pressure on the next movable joint down, kind of down the chain. So if you think about it, your shoulder is extremely mobile. And if we look at the skeleton here, these shoulder blades that are in the back of your body, they move around a lot, okay? So they have the ability to kind of turn in like this, and they have the ability to kind of turn out more like that, okay? In addition to that, I can't really show you on this particular skeleton because he has bolts right here, but the shoulder blades also kind of move this way, kind of away from the center of the back. And then the shoulder blades can also move this way towards the center of the back. And then in addition to that, the shoulder blades themselves can also move upward like this in like a shoulder shrug motion. And then they can also move downward like this. So they're very, very mobile, just your shoulder joints in general. But that's what gives us a lot of this, pretty unique, mobility in this arm or in this joint, okay? So you can go in these circles, you can bring your arm across, you can bring it back, you can again lift it up, push it down, move it around in these circles. So the interesting thing is that you have a lot of options there for potential things to also go wrong. So when that shoulder locks up and you lose just a few of those ranges of motion, whether it's the shoulder blades being able to move forward, back, up, down, rotate in or out, you have to look at where will you pick up that new, or where will you pick up the forces for that range of motion. So again, for this particular gentleman, we noticed that when I laid him down on the table, and if you can imagine me laying flat on my back, when I put his arm like this in this 90-90 position and I tried to internally rotate his arm, he could not go down very far, especially on his left side. So basically his left arm could not internally rotate down as far as his right arm. His right arm was actually a little bit better, and he was complaining that his left elbow was actually a little bit worse than the right. So looking at that motion, if you can't get this internal rotation out of the shoulder joint, you're going to try to pick up some of that range elsewhere. Now this joint right here does not move anything like what those shoulder blades move on the upper body. So if you're trying to move this and this is locked up, meaning that you're not able to rotate the shoulder this way, so this position is very similar to rotating the arm into this position. So whether you're lifting or whether you're actually golfing or anything else, it can actually create a lot more pressure here on this inside medial joint. So the golfer position, as you're swinging through, if you don't have the shoulder rotation to kind of start bringing your arm down and forward through this way, it's going to put more pressure on some of these little tiny muscles that run right here on the inside of your elbow, and it can strain this joint because now you're trying to do most of the work here, like through the elbow, instead of getting this whole shoulder to be able to rotate down and in. So effectively what I ended up doing was looking at a lot of this gentleman's internal rotating shoulder muscles. So some of the first things I'll show you and take you through some of the exercises that I did with him. But some of the first things are looking at some of the big muscles that help to internally rotate your shoulders. Okay, so one of the big ones that we had on him is that he was not able to get all of his chest muscles working very well. So one exercise that I had him do is I said, put your hands together, and we started up here at chest level. And I said, you know what, try to squeeze your hands into one another like this. And when you do that, I said, you should feel this right here on your chest muscles. These are the muscles that help kind of bring your arms together. So I had him hold his palms together and then just try to say, squeeze your hands together. Now when he did it right at this level, he's like, yeah, I feel that right here on my elbow, and I feel it right here on my elbow. I'm like, well, that's not correct. We should be feeling that here on the chest muscle, okay? So I said, let's try it again, but let's move your hands down a little bit. So we went down here to where his kind of hands were about at belly button level. I said, now try to kind of squeeze your hands together. So as we squeeze there, he could finally say, I feel a little bit of chest. He's like, but I still feel a little bit of elbow. So our first exercise, I said, you know what, let's just go really, really light and just gently try to squeeze in. And you can adjust left or right. You can also adjust kind of in close to your stomach or a little further away, so you can kind of go in or out this way. But I said we need to find these big movers, these big chest muscles, by squeezing the hands together. So what we did in this position is I just had him hold this squeeze, trying to flex his pec muscles for 6 seconds, and I had him repeat that for 6 sets. So we just did a 6 by 6 count down here of a light isometric. After we did that, we moved up a little bit, and I said, you know what, try it up here now. And he was like, oh, I can feel a little bit of chest, but I'm still feeling elbows. I was like, all right, well, let's try just a spot right in between. So we kind of went right in between, like right about here. So again, the first time we were way down here, and he could finally feel chest. Up here, he was still feeling some elbow. So we kind of cut that distance in half, and then we started to do it here. So in this position, he was like, oh, I can start feeling my chest. So you can kind of get where we're going here, is that this was his second exercise where we did 6 sets of 6-second contractions here. And then eventually we got to the point where he could feel his chest right here. So again, the whole thought process here is you should be feeling your chest when you're trying to squeeze your hands together in that position. So after we got that going, I started looking at some of the other big muscles that could also help internally rotate his shoulders. So the next one we did is I actually had him lay flat on the table, and I had him put his hands down on the table like this, lying flat on his back. So a person could do this also just lying on the floor, but here's a side position. And for this one, I had him try to push both of his arms down into the top surface of the floor. So down in this position, I said, you should feel these lat muscles start to engage. These are huge muscles also, but because of their attachment point here on the arm, they help to internally rotate the shoulder a little bit. So I said, in this position with your elbows straight, kind of palms down, I just want you to push your arms down into the top surface of the table. So again, in this position, a person could do this also standing up against a wall. So I'll kind of show you here on this wall right next to the skeleton here. But for this one, I just said, you know what, if you can stand against the wall or lay on the floor, in this position, all you're trying to do is just push both arms backwards into the wall. And as you do that, you're squeezing these lat muscles on both your right and your left side of your upper back. So I said, in that position, I just want you trying to bring your arms together, okay? So you're kind of pushing them back like this, but if you're not feeling your lats, you can try and change the position by not just pushing backward, but also trying to kind of push backwards and together. So as you push backwards and together, it's kind of this almost like a cheerleader position or almost like a soldier at attention position. But when you do that, you should feel these lat muscles engage. And so I had him do 6 sets of 6-second holds for that isometric as well. And I rechecked him, and we did some of the other stuff for the chest, and I rechecked his range of motion just a few minutes later. All of a sudden, both arms were able to go much further down into that internally rotated position on the shoulder joint. So anyway, those are just a couple of exercises. Again, it's this kind of standing up, you know, pushing your hands against a wall. I said you could do that on the inside of a door jamb or something else. And then the very first one that we did was just here, hands about in front of your belly button and just trying to kind of squeeze in. But you should be able to squeeze your arms in, even in this upper position, and still feel those chest muscles. Okay, so 2 main movements and 2 main exercises. Again, this one down here where you're trying to kind of bring your hands in and you're just trying to flex the muscle. You're not trying to go super hard like when you're lifting weights. It's very, very light. You're just trying to basically recreate that signal from your central nervous system down into the muscle, okay? So all we're trying to do is just basically flex those chest muscles, okay? And if you can't feel them in one of these positions, try to just slightly change your position a little bit. Again, we can go either closer in towards the chest, we can go further out, you can try to kind of go offset, like maybe you have to push a little bit with your hands to the right or left, or again, maybe you have to go lower or higher, but you should be able to feel your chest in some version of that squeezing in. Same rules for that one where we were trying to push our hands against the wall behind us, okay? If you can't feel it with your palms facing the wall, maybe try it like this with your palms facing the sides of your legs. If that doesn't work, maybe try it palms up, trying to push backwards, okay? And if that still doesn't work, maybe try hands a little wider, okay? If that still doesn't work, maybe try your hands a little further forward. So instead of going all the way back like this, try to get into the door jamb, similar to this, and just kind of walk further backwards into the door. So here, if that's not getting my lats, I can walk in just a little bit further like this and try to see if I can feel those same upper back muscles. So those are just a few options of trying to get those big muscles that are the big players to start rotating your shoulders down instead of feeling the pain right down on the inside of your elbow. So again, that was just kind of one example of one gentleman's experience with the elbow pain, and he was feeling quite a bit better and feeling like he had better range of motion, better activation of those big muscles at the end of the session.